The moment she stumbled into him, she wasn't sure what was louder, her heartbeat, or the gunshots she kept hearing in her memory. "Just hold me like you love me." "I'm being hunted," she whispered, blood on her hands and fear in her voice. He didn't ask who was after her, he already knew. Because the name she was about to say was the same man he'd put in the morgue. Thank you for being here. If you're hooked already, hit subscribe and drop your location below. Tomorrow's story will completely shatter your expectations. Rain fell sideways on 8th Street, slicing through the dark like glass. The city never really slept, but tonight it felt like it had stopped breathing. Lena's shoes slapped wet pavement as she ran, one arm cradling her purse like it was a newborn, the other pressed tight against the stitch in her side. Her scrubs were soaked, blood-specked, torn at the hem. Not all of the blood was hers. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew what she was running from. Behind her, 2 sets of footsteps echoed too close together. They weren't following her anymore. They were hunting her, like wolves. Like they already knew she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to see. She never should have stayed after her shift ended. The code blue came just as she was clocking out. Lena had hesitated just long enough to be there when they wheeled the guy in. Mid-30s. Bleeding from 3 gunshot wounds. But it wasn't the injuries that scared her. It was what he said before he flatlined. "Tell Volkov. The cops are in on it. Tell him they know. They know everything." 10 seconds later, his monitor flatlined. And 30 seconds after that, the wrong nurse walked into the OR with a syringe she didn't order. Then he was dead. No crash cart, no code team, just gone. Lena had stood frozen, as everyone else moved around her, like shadows. She'd gone home, shaken. Then someone had broken in. Not stolen, searched. They took nothing but her hospital badge. That's when she ran. And now here she was, ducking into a building she didn't recognize. No windows. Red light above the door. The bouncer didn't stop her, maybe because she looked too desperate, or maybe because he recognized fear when it punched him in the face. Inside, bass rumbled through her ribs. Bodies moved in slow motion under chandelier shadows. A club. Rich. Exclusive. Not the kind of place she belonged in. She staggered past the velvet rope, heart galloping in her chest, eyes scanning for exits. The air smelled like perfume and danger. She spotted a hallway to the left and darted down it, praying it didn't lead to a dead end. It didn't. It led to him. She ran straight into his chest. Hard. Solid. Like hitting a wall that exhaled warm cologne and menace. "Hey," he started, but stopped as her hands clutched his jacket. Lena looked up. He was tall, clean-shaven, slate-gray suit, eyes that held stillness like the ocean before a storm. And right then, she broke. I need you to hold me." Her voice was shaking. She didn't care. Just hold me like you love me. Please. I'm being hunted." He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask who she was. He didn't ask who was chasing her. He just wrapped his arms around her like she was his. His hand pressed gently against the back of her head, tucking her into his chest like he'd done it 1,000 times before. He was warm. She was shaking. Her tears soaked into his shirt. For the first time in hours, her legs stopped moving. The terror stayed, but it settled into her bones instead of clawing at her skin. His body was still, not stiff, not awkward, prepared. "Who?" he asked finally, his voice low and steady. But Lena just shook her head. They know I saw him die. They know I stayed. My apartment was broken into. My badge is gone. I didn't know where to go. I just ran. I thought." Her knees gave out. He caught her before she hit the floor, scooping her up like she weighed nothing. She felt the shift in him. Not panic. Precision. "Take us to the room," he said to someone nearby. She didn't look. She didn't care. They moved through the crowd like ghosts. People parted. No one stopped them. The music faded. She smelled leather, oak, expensive silence. A door shut behind them. She was laid on a couch, soft, velvet, warm. The man knelt beside her, cupping her face like he was checking for wounds. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena." Her voice cracked. I'm a nurse. At St. Joseph's." His jaw flexed. "Who's trying to kill you, Lena?" She blinked at him. Something about the way he said her name made her throat close. "I don't know his name," she whispered. "But the man who died, he told me something. Before he flatlined. About a man named Volkov." The temperature in the room dropped. She didn't notice. But he did. Because he was Volkov. Not the one in the message. The one behind it all. The man she was curled against wasn't just a stranger. He was the reason the dead man died. And now she had said his name, shivering, looking up at him like he was the only safe thing left in the world. He stood. And for a second, Lena thought he was going to leave. Instead, he pulled off his suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders. "You're safe now," he said. But in his eyes, something else flickered. Not fear. Calculation. Because if she remembered anything else, he would have to decide protect her or end her. The jacket on her shoulders was too expensive, too tailored to ever be hers. The fabric smelled faintly of sandalwood and something darker like embers and secrets. Lena curled deeper into it without thinking, letting her body sink into the velvet cushions beneath her. She was dry now, mostly, but her bones still shook. Across the room, the man watched her. Silent, still, unreadable. He hadn't asked her to repeat what she'd said. He didn't need to. The name had landed between them like a blade. Volkov. She'd said it with fear. He wore it like a crown. She was still talking, trying to piece together her own unraveling. He kept saying they knew, the cops, that they were part of it. And then, her voice broke. He just flatlined. No crash. No help. Just silence. "I think someone killed him on that table." The man crossed to the bar in the corner, poured water into a glass. His movements were calm. Too calm. He brought it back and handed it to her, crouching to her level again. "Drink?" She took it with trembling fingers and sipped, grateful for the cold against her dry throat. "What did the patient look like?" he asked softly. White. Mid-30s. He had a broken nose. Old one. Looked like it healed wrong. Tattoos on both arms. Faded. She swallowed hard. He was bleeding out. "I remember." He kept trying to say a name before he died. Kept saying Volkov. Like a warning. He nodded once. Slowly. Not surprised. Not confused. And not denying it. She stared at him. Her instincts, sharp from years in ER trauma, suddenly lit up like sirens. "Wait, what's your name?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. Just tilted his head. "You already said it." Her blood ran cold. "Volkov?" "Alexander Volkov," he said. "Yes." The silence stretched between them. She froze. Not because he had confirmed it, but because he said it so calmly, like the sky being blue, like death being certain. Her breath hitched. "You're the one he was warning about." Alexander said nothing. Instead, he stood, pulled his phone from his pocket, and sent a quick message. Lena couldn't see to whom. His fingers moved fast. Efficient. She stood up on unsteady legs, water glass still in her hand. "You," her voice was sharp now. "You brought me here. You let me say all that. What is this? Are you going to kill me now? Is that what this is?" Alexander looked at her, and something flickered behind his eyes. Regret, maybe, or a shadow of it. "If I wanted you dead," he said calmly, You wouldn't have made it through the front door. Lena stepped back. He didn't move. What did I walk into? She whispered. A war. She felt like the floor shifted under her. You killed him, she said slowly. That man in the ER, the one they brought in. No, Alexander replied, his voice cold. But I should have. He was mine. And he was sloppy. That landed even worse. Yours? He worked for me, embedded in a trafficking ring with ties to police. He got caught. I had a way out planned for him. But someone got to him first. You just happened to be the last person he talked to. So now what? Lena asked. You make me disappear too? Alexander didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned and walked to the window. The view looked down over the river, Chicago lights dancing on the waves. The penthouse was clean, modern, dangerous in its restraint. You shouldn't have heard that name, he said finally. Not in public. Not in fear. I didn't exactly have time to rehearse, she snapped. Alexander turned back to her. And now his mask cracked just a little. I'm not your enemy, Lena. You're not my friend, either. His jaw clenched. That depends. On what? On whether you survive the next 24 hours. Her legs nearly buckled again. She sat back down, unable to process the threat or the strange calm behind it. I didn't do anything wrong, she said, quieter now. I didn't ask for this. No, he agreed. But you're in it now, whether you want to be or not. Lena wrapped his jacket tighter around her, like it might shield her from more than just the cold. I want to go home. You can't. Why? Because they're already watching your building, Alexander said flatly. And your badge was used to access hospital records 2 hours ago. They're scrubbing everything who was on duty, who signed what, who might have heard what he said. If they find your name on those logs, and they will. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. She knew how that sentence ended. I have nothing to do with this, she whispered. You do now. Lena stared at him. Her pulse was erratic. Her mind was racing. Every door out of this felt closed. Except him. The man whose name made other men die. The man who now stood between her and whatever hell was coming. Alexander sat across from her, elbows on his knees. I can keep you alive, Lena, but I need the truth. She blinked. I told you everything. He leaned in slightly. You didn't tell me what else he said. She hesitated. He said. She swallowed. He said the cops were in on it, that Volkov needed to know. That they know everything. Alexander closed his eyes for a long second. When he opened them, his expression had changed. Gone was the charming stranger in the hallway. Now, she saw the man the rumors whispered about. Then they're planning something big, he said. Lena's throat tightened. What does that mean? It means you're not just a witness. You're the only loose end. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered. Alexander didn't flinch. But Lena? She finally understood the price of survival. It wasn't hiding. It was choosing the devil who wanted you breathing long enough to get what he needed. And right now? That devil's name was Alexander Volkov. And she was wearing his jacket. Lena didn't sleep. She couldn't, not in the penthouse of a man who had just confirmed he was both her protector and her biggest threat. She paced the perimeter of the massive living room, while Alexander stood by the window like a statue carved from vengeance. His phone buzzed occasionally. Each time, he read the message, typed a reply with silent efficiency, and returned to watching the city like it owed him something. Around 4 a.m., she stopped pacing. I need to call someone, she said. Alexander turned. No. Her brows furrowed. Excuse me? You call the wrong person, he said, voice low. You don't make it to sunrise. I know someone, she insisted. Detective Roland. I worked with him on an assault case last year. He's solid. Smart. He'll help. Alexander moved toward her slowly, like a lion who didn't need to raise its voice to be dangerous. His name is Eric Roland, Alexander said. Badge number 51567. Divorced twice. Gambling debt of $60,000. He tried to cover with a fake injury claim 6 months ago. You want to know where he gets his money now? Lena's blood chilled. Alexander's voice dropped. He's on their payroll, has been for 2 years. She stared at him, stunned. How do you know all that? I know everything that touches my name, he said, even when it's whispered. Lena backed away. Then why keep me alive? He didn't flinch. Because you're not just a witness. You're leverage. She shook her head, lips parting in disbelief. Leverage for what? Alexander reached for the tablet on the glass table beside him. He tapped something, then handed it to her. It showed a news clip, no sound, just video. Grainy security footage of a man being pulled from a black SUV. Hooded. Dragged into a warehouse. A timestamp in the corner read, 2 hours ago. Lena's hands trembled. Who is that? His name was Emilio, Alexander said quietly. He was supposed to bring you to me. He failed. She stared at the screen, trying to process the layers. So you knew about me before I came to the club? I knew you existed. I didn't know how deep you were in it until you said my name. And now? Now, Alexander said, walking back to the window, I have to keep you alive longer than they expect. Lena sank into the couch. Her head was spinning. I should never have gone to work that night. No, he agreed. You shouldn't have. His lack of comfort hit her like a slap. He wasn't trying to make her feel better. He was trying to keep her alive. A thought struck her then. If I'm leverage, she said, what happens when I'm not useful anymore? Alexander didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. She stood. Right. Got it. He turned to her, then, eyes unreadable. I don't kill people without cause, Lena. But you do kill people. He didn't deny it. She walked to the edge of the room, staring out into the dark. What's the plan, then? She asked. I stay here until you fix this? No, he said. You stay here until I decide if you're a liability or an opportunity. Her chest tightened. But there's one thing I need to know before that. She turned toward him slowly. What? Alexander stepped closer. For the first time since she'd met him, something behind his voice flickered. Not warmth, not cold. Something in between. Did the man in the hospital give you anything? She blinked. Like, what? Paper. Phone. Key. Anything. Lena shook her head. No. He was dying. He barely spoke. Alexander studied her. You're sure? I'm sure. His jaw clenched. Then someone else has it. Lena felt the tension ripple through him like a wire pulled too tight. Alexander turned and barked something in Russian into his phone. Seconds later, one of his men appeared at the door. Bring up her bag. And get me eyes on the emergency room from last night. Every camera. The man nodded and vanished. Lena sat back down. Her body was starting to betray her sleep deprivation, clouding the edges of her vision. Her voice, when she spoke again, was quieter. Can I ask you something? You can ask, Alexander said. Why do you smell like gunpowder and oak? That pulled the corner of his mouth upward for the first time. You smell like adrenaline and bad decisions, he replied. She laughed softly, surprising even herself. Is that your way of flirting? If I were flirting, he said, stepping toward her, you'd know. Lena stared up at him, exhausted. Furious. Alive. He stopped in front of her and reached down to take her pulse at her wrist. You're not safe, Lena. Not in the way you want to be. But you're safer now than you were 2 hours ago. Her breath caught. You don't even know me. I don't need to, he said. I've seen what people look like when they run out of places to hide. She looked down. Yeah. Well, you're looking at her. Alexander's hand didn't leave her wrist. His grip wasn't tight, but it was firm. Final. You're not hiding anymore, he said. You're with me now. And for reasons she didn't understand, those words should have terrified her. But instead, they were the first ones that made her feel like she might survive this after all. Would you trust someone more dangerous than the people hunting you if they were also the only one who wanted to keep you alive? Drop your answer in the comments. Morning didn't come softly. It bled in through the tall windows like something broken and gray, streaking across the concrete skyline of Chicago. The city moved on like it didn't know Lena Rivera had spent the night in the den of the man whose name was carved into corpses. She sat at the breakfast bar in one of Alexander's shirts pressed cotton, far too big, smelling like midnight and secrets. Her scrubs had been taken by one of his men for cleaning. She wasn't sure she'd ever wear them again. Across from her, Alexander sipped espresso like the world hadn't shifted on its axis. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing ink along his left forearm. Not decorative. Marked. Military, maybe. She didn't ask. What happens next? She asked, voice hoarse. Alexander didn't look at her. That depends. On what? Whether they think you're already dead. She blinked. What? You vanished. No phone activity. No sightings. No badge use. If they believe they missed their chance, they may shift focus to the others. Your coworkers. Witnesses. Anyone who might have been in the room. Lena set her coffee down harder than she meant to. You mean they're going to start picking off people who might know something? Yes. That's murder. That's insurance. She stood. Then we have to tell someone. Warn them. Lena, Alexander interrupted, calm but firm. There's no one to tell. Her mouth opened, but the words died in her throat. Your detective? Compromised. The hospital board? Bought. The press? Controlled by fear or bribes. You want to protect those people? He leaned in. Then we burn the whole chain. At once. Her stomach turned. So, what do you need from me? To help you build a case? I don't build cases, he said. I end bloodlines. Silence sat heavy between them. Then Alexander's phone buzzed once. He picked it up, read the screen, and slid it across the marble counter toward her. Unknown number. One image. A photo of her. At work. From 3 days ago. Laughing with a nurse. Casual. Unaware. And behind her in the photo? The man who died in the ER. Lena gasped. They knew each other, she whispered. Alexander nodded. And someone followed him into that hospital. Probably 2 people. One to finish him. The other to find out who he spoke to. Which was me. Which was you. Lena looked up. How much danger am I actually in? Alexander met her eyes. If you leave here, you die. She sat down slowly. Her mind reeled. And then, her own question surprised her. What about my sister? Alexander stilled. You have a sister? She's in school, law. She's all I've got. I haven't spoken to her since this started because I didn't want to lead them to her. He looked at her for a long moment. I need her name. No. Lena. I said no, she snapped. If you're lying about protecting me, I'm not handing you the only person I care about. Alexander's expression didn't change, but his voice cooled by 10 degrees. If I wanted leverage over you, I wouldn't ask. She froze. I'd already have her. The implication made her blood run cold. He stood up. I'll find out who else he spoke to. Who else saw him. You stay here. My men will keep you safe. She followed him with her eyes as he crossed the room, pulled on a black coat, and opened the heavy door. "Where are you going?" she asked. Alexander turned to her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "To remind people who I am." Then he was gone, and Lena was alone with her thoughts. The quiet in the penthouse was too sharp. She stood, began to pace, and then grabbed one of the burner phones Alexander's team had left in a box on the counter. No contacts, no messages, just clean lines and clean history. She didn't dial. Not yet. Instead, she walked to the window and stared down at the city. She didn't belong here. Not in this building. Not in this world. But she also didn't belong in a morgue drawer with a toe tag that said Jane Doe. A door opened behind her softer than Alexander's, one of his men, a blonde one. Young, calm eyes. He handed her something. Her purse. Recovered from the alley she ran through last night. "I went back for it," he said. "Boss said you might have dropped something important." She opened it quickly. Most of it was still there. ID, lip balm, crumpled receipts. But wedged in a hidden pocket she didn't remember using? A folded scrap of paper. She opened it. One name, one address, one date. It was in her own handwriting. But she didn't remember writing it. Her hands shook as she read it again. And again. Is this real?" she whispered. The blonde man frowned. "Is something wrong?" She looked up at him, eyes wide. "I need to see Alexander. He'll be back in a few hours. I can't wait. Please, tell him I found something. Something the dead man gave me without me even knowing it." The man stared at her, then nodded. "I'll get him." He turned to leave. Lena stared down at the paper again. The name on it? Not Alexander Volkov, but someone who might be the key to everything. And suddenly, she didn't feel like a pawn anymore. She felt like a fuse, lit and waiting. The address on the paper burned in Lena's hand like a brand. She stared at it again, half expecting the ink to vanish or rearrange itself. But it stayed the same. Sharp. Slanted. Her handwriting. But not her memory. The mind is funny under trauma. She must have scribbled it when adrenaline was high and instincts were louder than thought. But that didn't make it less terrifying. Because the name on that note didn't belong to a nurse. Or a patient. It belonged to a man already declared dead. Detective R. Van. Badge retired. Status. Killed in the line of duty. But someone had written "not dead" under the address. In red. And somehow, that note had found its way into her purse. Alexander returned within the hour. He moved like a storm held together by a tie, his steps precise, eyes sharper than they had been the night before. Blood specked the cuff of his shirt. His coat was missing. He didn't offer explanations. "Tell me," he said the moment he walked in. Lena handed him the note. Alexander read it. Once. Twice. A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Where did you get this?" "It was in my bag. Hidden." She hesitated. "I think the man in the ER must have slipped it in before he died. I didn't see him do it. I didn't even know it was there." Alexander said nothing. Then he folded the paper and slid it into his coat pocket. "Pack a bag. You have 10 minutes. "What? Why?" "We're going to him." Lena stared. "You said I couldn't leave." "You couldn't," he said. "Until now." She didn't ask more questions. She went upstairs, changed into clean clothes, black jeans, a hoodie one of his men had left folded on the bed, boots that weren't hers but fit too well to be coincidence. When she came down, Alexander was waiting by the elevator, speaking Russian into his phone in low, clipped commands. They didn't take his usual car. Instead, they took an unmarked black SUV, windows tinted, license plate scrambled. Two of Alexander's men rode up front. Lena sat beside him in the back. She watched his hands resting calmly on his knees, though the tension in his jaw gave him away. He was bracing for something. The city blurred past. Not downtown this time. They drove south, past where tourists went, past where cops cared, into a neighborhood Lena hadn't been in since high school community service. An abandoned auto garage loomed ahead. "This is it?" she asked. Alexander didn't answer. He got out, opened her door, and guided her in. The garage was dark. One overhead light flickered. Dust hung in the air like ghosts. A metal staircase led to a loft office. Alexander didn't knock. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. Lena followed and stopped cold. The man standing by the desk wasn't a ghost, but he looked like one. Mid-50s. Scar above his right eye. Left arm in a sling. But his eyes were the same ones from the ER body. "Detective Van?" Lena breathed. He looked at her, then at Alexander. "Took you long enough." Lena turned to Alexander. "You knew he was alive?" "I suspected," he said. Van snorted. "That's how he says I sent men to kill you, but you got lucky." Alexander didn't flinch. "I need the list," he said. Van turned cold. "I don't owe you anything." "You owe him," Alexander said, stepping forward. "He died because you used him to pass a message instead of trusting me directly." "I didn't trust you." "Then why the hell are we here?" Lena stepped between them. "Wait," she said. "What list?" Van looked at her. Something softened in his face. "You must be the nurse. The one who tried to save him." Lena nodded. Van exhaled. "The list is the names of every law enforcement officer connected to the syndicate. The ones taking kickbacks, covering up raids, planting fake evidence. The ones who knew about the trafficking ring and did nothing." Alexander's voice was a low growl. "Give me the list." Van didn't move. "You don't get to decide how this ends." Lena stepped in again. "He's the only reason I'm still alive." Van looked at her, then slowly opened the drawer, pulled out a flash drive, and tossed it on the desk. Alexander grabbed it, slipped it into his inner jacket pocket. "Make a copy," he said. "I already did," Van replied. Alexander nodded once, then turned to Lena. "We're leaving." She hesitated. "Thank you," she said to Van. He nodded. "Don't trust him." "I don't," she said. "But I trust that he wants this list more than he wants me dead." Alexander said nothing. They walked back out into the gray light. Inside the SUV, Alexander inserted the flash drive into a secure port built into the console. A list popped up on the tablet screen mounted between the front seats. Lena stared. There were 83 names. Some were cops. Some were judges. One was a senator. Her stomach dropped. "They'll kill to protect this," she whispered. "They already are," Alexander said. "But now, they'll kill faster." Lena looked at him. For the first time, she saw not just the suit and the silence. She saw the hunter. And now? He had a target. The drive back was silent, thick with tension. Lena sat stiffly in the passenger seat of the SUV, her eyes locked on the tablet in Alexander's hands. The names on the list looped across the screen in brutal, quiet betrayal. She recognized a few. One of them had come to speak at her hospital's community fundraiser. Another had handed her a commendation for stopping a knife-wound bleed-out during a gun bust last year. Every single one of them had blood on their hands. Her fingers trembled in her lap. "You knew about the corruption?" she asked quietly, voice rough. "I suspected pieces," Alexander replied without looking at her. "This is the full picture. The rot at the roots." "And what now?" "We cut it out." She stared at him. "You mean, all of them?" He finally looked at her, dark eyes steady. All of them. The air inside the vehicle grew colder. She turned back toward the window, watching the blur of city streets pass like memories she didn't want. "You're not doing this because of me," she said. "No. You're doing it because the man who died in the ER was your informant." "Yes." She nodded, lips pressing into a thin line. "Then what happens when you're done using me?" Alexander was quiet for a beat. Then two. "When this ends," he said, "you'll be free, if that's what you want." She didn't answer, because the truth was she didn't know what she wanted anymore. Safety? Revenge? Escape? Or maybe, just maybe, someone who didn't look away from her when things got ugly. Someone like him. They were halfway back to the penthouse when Alexander's phone buzzed again. This time, his eyes sharpened the second he read it. "Change of plans," he muttered. "What's wrong?" Lena asked. He turned to her. "They know we met with Van." Lena's stomach dropped. "How?" Alexander's jaw clenched. Either they're watching him, or someone close to him flipped. "What does that mean for us?" "It means they'll retaliate, fast." He dialed a number, spoke Russian in clipped tones, then hung up and turned to the driver. "We're not going back to the penthouse," he said. "Reroute, take us to the Haven." The driver nodded once, adjusting the GPS. Lena sat up straighter. "What's the Haven?" "An off-grid property, surveillance-proof, armored, reinforced, and empty." "You have bunkers now?" Alexander cracked a dry smile. "You call them bunkers. I call them insurance." They arrived 2 hours later deep in the outskirts of Cook County, past farmlands and forests, where phone signals died and people didn't ask questions. The house was built like a fortress disguised as a lodge. Stone walls, reinforced windows, a digital lock that scanned Alexander's face before opening. Inside, it was surprisingly warm. Not cozy, exactly, but it didn't feel like a cage. He walked her through the security layout like a commander briefing a soldier. Panic room is behind the master closet, weapons stashed in the drawer under the stairs. One backup phone untraceable in the kitchen safe. She tried to remember everything. Tried not to notice the way he hovered near her close enough to protect, but distant enough to let her breathe. He handed her a duffel of fresh clothes and gestured toward the guest room. "You'll be safe here," he said. "I don't feel safe anywhere," she whispered. Alexander paused, then stepped closer. His voice softened, just slightly. "You will. I promise." Something in his tone made her throat tighten, not because it was gentle, but because it felt like he meant it, and that scared her more than anything. Hours passed. Lena showered, changed, ate something, barely. Then she wandered into the living room to find Alexander seated on the leather couch, a glass of whiskey in one hand, the flash drive connected to his tablet in the other. He looked up as she entered. "Tired?" She nodded. "Scared?" She hesitated, then nodded again. "Good," he said. "Means you're still alive." She sat down on the opposite end of the couch, watched him for a long moment. "Why him?" she asked. "The man in the hospital. Your informant." Alexander didn't look away from the screen. He was a cop. Undercover. Clean. One of the last. He volunteered to infiltrate the trafficking network. But he made a mistake. What kind of mistake? He trusted someone. Alexander's voice darkened. And they handed him over. Lena's chest tightened. "Did you know he was going to die?" Alexander shook his head. "I had a team staged outside the hospital to pull him after he passed a message. They were 3 minutes too late." Lena swallowed hard. "Because of me." "No," he said firmly, finally turning to her. "Because of them. You tried to save him." She blinked back, sudden heat in her eyes. You think I'm brave, she said quietly. I know you're brave. Lena laughed bitterly. I'm not. I'm just scared in a different direction. Alexander leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I've been surrounded by killers, liars, and ghosts for years. You? You ran into hell trying to hold someone together. That's not fear. That's fire. She looked at him. Really looked. The monster. The myth. The man. Then what does that make you? She asked. Alexander didn't smile. Didn't flinch. He just said, with total calm, a man they fear more than death. Lena's breath caught. And she realized something she hadn't dared to admit. She wasn't just scared of him anymore. She was scared for him. Because if this war broke out, it wouldn't just burn cities. It would burn him, too. And she wasn't sure she could watch that happen. Lena should have stayed put. She knew that. Alexander had made it clear twice that the moment she stepped out of his protection, she became a blinking target. Not just bait, but the bait. The only living witness tied to the man whose murder ignited a war. But some part of her couldn't sit still anymore. Couldn't just wait. Not when her sister, Brielle, didn't know a single bullet had nearly changed Lena's life forever. So she made a choice. A stupid, reckless, desperate one. And, like all dangerous choices, it started with a lie. Alexander had left early, taking 2 of his men to meet with an old contact about the senators on the list. You stay here, he said before leaving. Lock the doors. Answer only to me. She'd nodded. And then, 5 minutes later, walked right out the back. She took one of the cars he kept stashed behind the house, an ordinary silver sedan with out-of-state plates. Keys were in the visor. No one stopped her. She turned off her phone before pulling onto the highway. Brielle lived across town in a small off-campus apartment. Law school had become her world. Last Lena heard, she was prepping for finals and barely sleeping. She had no idea her older sister had run straight into the jaws of a Mafia syndicate. Lena kept her hood up as she approached the apartment. She didn't ring the buzzer. She climbed the fire escape, just like she used to when she snuck in with cupcakes during Brielle's all-nighters. When her sister answered the knock on the window, Lena barely got out a whisper before Brielle pulled her inside. What the hell, Lena? Where have you been? I've been calling you for 2 days. I know, Lena said quickly. I'm sorry. I can't explain everything right now, but I'm okay. I just needed to see you. To make sure you were okay. Brielle frowned, arms crossed, clearly furious and worried at the same time. You look like you haven't slept in years. I haven't. Lena forced a weak smile. You're safe, right? No one's come by. No weird calls? No, Brielle said. What's going on? Lena hesitated, then hugged her. Tight. Too tight. I'll tell you everything later, she whispered. But later never came. Because that's when the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy. Wrong. Lena's stomach dropped. She pushed Brielle behind her and rushed to the window too late. The hallway door crashed open. 3 men. All in black, no hesitation. Lena didn't think she shoved her sister into the closet and slammed the door just as the first man lunged for her. She ducked, screamed, grabbed the lamp off the table and slammed it into his face. He grunted and stumbled back. Blood sprayed the wall. The second man grabbed her by the arm and spun her just as a gunshot shattered the window from outside. The man's chest exploded in red. Lena screamed again and dropped to the floor. The front door flew open, and this time, the devil himself walked in. Alexander. His gun was already raised. He didn't blink. He fired again twice, precise, controlled. Both men hit the ground before Lena could even process what happened. Silence. Then Alexander turned to her. His face was stone. I told you to stay put. Lena couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. His men entered behind him, clearing the apartment in seconds. One of them opened the closet. Brielle screamed. Clear, the guard shouted. Lena rushed to her sister and pulled her out, both of them trembling. Alexander stood by the bodies like they were garbage bags. You led them here, he said, his voice ice. Lena's chest cracked open. I just needed to see her. I didn't think. No, Alexander said, stepping closer. You didn't, that's the problem. One of his men began setting charges. What are you doing? Lena asked. We can't leave a scene, Alexander said. This place burns. Now. Brielle backed away. What? You can't just. You can, Lena whispered. When this is who you are. Alexander's eyes met hers. I told you what happens when you leave my protection. And I told you, Lena said, voice shaking. I'm not a prisoner. You're alive, he snapped. That's more than they wanted. His words stung, but they were true. Brielle grabbed Lena's hand. Who is this guy? Lena looked up at Alexander, then down at the bodies, then back at her sister. The man who just saved your life, she said softly. They didn't speak on the drive back. Brielle sat in the back seat, pale and stunned, clutching Lena's hand. Alexander stared ahead, jaw like granite, the steering wheel clutched like he wanted to snap it in half. When they reached the haven, his men took Brielle inside and set her up in a secure room. Lena stayed outside. Alexander got out of the car slowly. You don't get to disappear and reappear with blood on your shoes, he said, walking toward her. I wasn't running away. No, he agreed. You were running toward something. Something they followed. Lena stared at the ground. I didn't know. You didn't want to. He stepped closer. I can't protect you if you keep treating this like a choice. Her voice was barely a whisper. It is a choice. He froze. She met his gaze. I choose to be here, with you. I didn't run from you, Alexander. I ran to someone I love. The silence that followed was brutal. And then, his expression cracked. Just a fraction. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You ever run like that again, he said. And I won't save you. I don't want to be saved, she whispered. I know. He leaned in, kissed her forehead, and walked away, leaving her with a taste of ash and something far more dangerous. The fear that she was already his. The haven was quiet. Too quiet. After the chaos at Brielle's apartment, Lena expected screaming, confrontation, blood on the floors. But Alexander's world didn't unravel, it absorbed chaos like it was born for it. His men cleaned up. His tech scrambled the footage. His connections silenced what the bullets couldn't. And yet, inside the silence, Lena heard everything. Her guilt, her fear, her heartbeat, her sister's muffled sobs through the wall. And underneath it all, the undeniable hum of something she didn't want to name. Because Alexander hadn't looked at her the same since he saved her again. Not with anger, but with something worse. Disappointment. It was after midnight when she found him in the study. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of 3 screens and a single reading lamp. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled up. A gun lay on the table beside him, uncleaned, blood still on the barrel. He didn't look up when she walked in. She stood by the door for a long moment, trying to breathe through the tension in her chest. I'm sorry, she said finally. Still, he didn't turn. I thought I could protect her, she continued. And maybe a part of me just wanted to feel like I wasn't helpless anymore. But I see it now. All I did was put her in your line of fire. Alexander's voice came low. Controlled. She's alive. That's more than she would be if I hadn't followed you. Lena stepped closer. But someone died. Again. They made their choice the moment they walked through her door. That's how you survive, right? She asked, arms crossed. By convincing yourself everyone who dies deserves it? He turned now, slowly. And something in his face, cold, exhausted, vulnerable, cut her deeper than his silence ever could. No, he said. That's how I live. Lena swallowed. Her voice cracked. I'm tired of surviving. He stood, crossed the room, stopped in front of her, tall and terrifying, and something else entirely. I want to live, she said, voice trembling. But not like this. Not afraid of you. Alexander reached for her chin, tilted her face up. You should be. Her breath caught. But she didn't flinch. I'm not. Then you're more dangerous than I thought. She stared up at him, blinking tears she didn't let fall. I don't know what I am anymore. Alexander leaned in, his forehead pressed to hers. And for the first time, his voice dropped not in threat, but in something close to reverence. Then let me show you. Lena didn't move. Didn't breathe. He didn't kiss her, not yet. He just stayed close enough for the ache to settle in both of them like a bruise they didn't want to heal. Then he stepped back and walked to the window. Tomorrow, he said, we strike first. She turned. What does that mean? Alexander looked out into the darkness. It means they've had time, power, protection. But now, I have names, locations, weak links. He turned to her. And you. I have you. Lena's throat tightened. What am I supposed to do? Stay alive. That's not enough anymore. He studied her for a long, hard moment. Then pulled open the drawer beside him and handed her something cold. A gun. Small. Light, matte black. Lena stared at it. I don't know how to use this. You'll learn. She looked up at him. Do you want me to kill someone? No, he said. I want you to understand what it feels like to hold the power they've used against you. Her hand trembled slightly as she gripped it. Then steadied. She exhaled. And for the first time since the night everything fell apart, she didn't feel hunted. She felt loaded. Loaded with truth. With fear. With resolve. Alexander watched her. Then walked to her and slid the gun back from her hand with care. You don't need this tonight, he said softly. You need sleep. She didn't argue. But when he walked her to the guest room door, she stopped just outside. Turned to him. I wasn't running from death, she said quietly. He froze. I was running from being forgotten. Alexander's hand brushed hers. Then let me be the man who never looks away again. Lena's heart broke a little because it wasn't a promise. It was a confession. She leaned into him, head against his chest, not asking for comfort, just being. He wrapped his arms around her, held her like she was already his, and whispered into her hair, just hold me like you love me. She didn't say it aloud, but deep inside, she thought. I already do. The air was still before the storm. Lena stood in the hallway of Alexander's Haven bunker, dressed in black, her hair pulled back, no makeup, no armor, just truth clinging to her skin like a second layer. Across the room, Alexander loaded a pistol with the calm of a man who'd done it 1,000 times. Beside him, 2 of his lieutenants reviewed the list of names from the flash drive. One by one, each name had been assigned a file, a surveillance pattern, a weak point. This was it. The war didn't start with bullets. It started with a witness who refused to die. Lena took a step toward him. You're sure about this? She asked. Alexander didn't look up. I've been sure since the moment you said his name. She exhaled slowly. I'm going to testify. I know. That'll put a target on your back too. He finally turned to her, his eyes locked in, unblinking. There's already one there. She nodded. Brielle left an hour ago, she said. Your men are driving her to a secure location? She'll be untouchable, he said. I gave her a new name. A new life. You'll be able to reach her, but no one else will. Tears threatened, but Lena held them back. There was no room for emotion now. Not when everything they'd done, everything they'd risked, came down to this moment. Alexander crossed to her. Are you afraid? He asked. Lena hesitated, then nodded. But not of dying. What then? Of living after you. The silence between them pulsed like a heartbeat. He reached up, touched her cheek. I'll make sure you don't have to. Then he leaned in, slow and sure, and kissed her not like goodbye, but like an oath. When he pulled back, his voice was steady. This ends today. The courthouse was surrounded. Not by protesters or press, but by men in suits with nothing but war behind their eyes. Alexander's people. Every rooftop, every alley, every exit covered. Lena stepped out of the armored car flanked by two of his lieutenants. Her heart thundered, but her spine stayed straight. Inside the courtroom, federal marshals waited. The flash drive had already been turned over to a clean task force. The judge was briefed. Cameras were off. No press allowed. Just a quiet explosion about to happen. Lena took the stand. And when the prosecutor asked her what she saw in the emergency room that night, she looked straight ahead and spoke clearly. I saw a man murdered. And I saw who let it happen. She named names. Every last one Alexander had confirmed. The judge didn't blink. The courtroom was silent. But outside, chaos bloomed. Because, as Lena spoke, Alexander moved. In the back streets of the city, at the same time her testimony rolled out like gunfire, Alexander struck. 3 simultaneous raids. Syndicate strongholds torn apart, cars blown. Men arrested. Others never made it out. He moved through it like a ghost in a tailored suit. No mercy. No doubt. He didn't just cut the head off the snake. He burned the entire nest. By the time Lena finished her statement and was taken into protective custody, the city was different. The syndicate? Shattered. Their influence? Exposed. Their leaders? Dead or disappeared. Alexander didn't wait to be thanked. He didn't stay to explain himself. 3 weeks later, Lena sat on a beach in a quiet part of the Gulf Coast. Witness protection had offered her a new identity, a new apartment, a chance to start again. She'd taken it. But she hadn't moved on. Not really. Every morning she checked the news, wondering if she'd see his name. A body, a photo. Nothing. Alexander Volkov had vanished. Gone as if he'd never existed. Until the letter came. Folded into a blank envelope, hand-delivered to her porch by someone she didn't recognize. Inside, one line. If I could be anything, I'd be the man you believed in. Until then, just hold me in your memory like you love me. Below it, a pressed gardenia. Her favorite flower. She clutched the note to her chest. And cried for the first time since the war ended. Months passed. Seasons turned, but some ghosts refused to be buried. It was spring when she heard the knock at her door. Soft, intentional. Lena opened it slowly, half expecting another courier. Instead, she saw a man standing in the rain. Soaked through. Still breathing. Still dangerous. But this time? Smiling. Alexander. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. She stepped into him, wrapping her arms around his soaked suit, her face pressed into his chest, and whispered, "Just hold me like you love me." His arms closed around her. Tight. Final. Home. Always, he said. And for the first time in a long, bloody, broken stretch of her life, Lena believed him. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.